Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind, our first episode of 2026. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm going to run solo today. There is no preparation, there is no script, there is no agenda. I just feel that it's the start of a new year. So let's talk to those people who tune in, day out on Acsom to put us where we currently are, which apparently is in my Celtic themed bedroom, if you believe the hype. Get your questions in, get your points in, points for discussion. You will lead this next hour. This is the first show of 2026, and I have an aim, a goal, an objective, a purpose of 2026, and that is to provide 365 days of award-winning content. Can I do it? Well, woke up this morning and thought I better get started. Many people will take a day off. I'm talking Celtic. It feels like a day off. I'd be doing this anyway. And straight off the bat, Hitman DJ number one comes in to wish us a happy new year. Thank you. And yes, let's hope that it's a happy and a healthy 2026. Because if you've got happiness and health, everything else will follow. Thank you also to Terence Boyle for supporting the channel. There's your first two comments. Get your comments in. What is the tagline? New manager, new chairman, new football director. I'm not sure if 2025 was the year of the rat, but I've been told that 2026 is the year of the horse. And I think that we need to get back on the saddle as a football club. We've fallen off at one point, haven't we? Not quite sure where, unravelled as it tends to do with Celtic, to quote a great man, death by 1,000 cuts. This isn't a negative show, this is about change, and change should always be viewed as positive, particularly when you're in a period, I think, that Celtic are in at the moment, a period of flux. We need to make big changes in the big categories, in the big positions, and I'm going to give you my view on who should be the new chairman, who should be the new manager, who should be the new head of the football department, who should be the new head of the academy. We, as a football club, and I think this was very interesting, I hadn't really thought about this until yesterday. We, as a football club, Patrick McGulp said it. Patrick McGulp, incidentally, if I was to give a player of the year in terms of Acsom, let's do an awards as well. Let's look back on 2025. My player of the year is Patrick McGulp. I think he is a promising young player. He's like a 23-year-old Paul McStay coming through at Celtic and showing us all how it's done. An absolutely fantastic voice for the Celtic support. So balanced, and he's kind of old before his age, if you understand what I mean. And a great Celtic fan who goes home and away. So there you go. There's my first award. You tell me what award you want me to give, and I'll give it, and I'll be honest about it. And I'm going to bring up your comments. You are going to lead this conversation. I want to talk, though, some loose subjects. I want to talk about the new chairman, what they can bring to the football club. I want to talk about the type of people who might make up a new Celtic board. In actual fact, I think that's important to discuss. I want to talk about a new manager, because Nancy is not a Celtic manager. Nancy, for me, shouldn't even be the Celtic manager when we run out this weekend to play Rangers. It's perhaps bold. It's not a pile-on. It's just the fact that this individual is in the wrong movie. He's not connecting with the players. He's not connecting with the fans. And maybe even more importantly, he's not getting results. And that's what it comes down to at Celtic. You cannot win 2 games in 7 and expect to come out after games with coaching manual psychobabble and try to fool people like you and me, because I don't have a coaching qualification. I don't have that. But in life, I think that you start to understand BS. I think you can call it out. You don't suffer fools. I think that you learn that. Sometimes it's instinctive. You learn it in all walks of life, regardless of what your background is in terms of jobs, etc. And I can just see that this individual is out of his depth. He's out of his depth because of a chain of events. And for anyone who hasn't heard this tale, I'm going to start off with this, and I'm going to jump right into your comments. So Dermot Desmond, as we know, owns 34.7% of the Celtic shareholding, yet he seems to have 100% of control. He can demand who is and isn't the Celtic manager. He can even foist players onto managers. And we had an episode in 2025 where we were able to give examples, and this was examples based on speaking to the individuals who were involved in the transfers, be that manager, assistant manager, or the players themselves. We could find examples right back to Gordon Strachan. So this isn't a new phenomenon of interference by non-football individuals at the football club. And he has been swooned, I think is the only word, by Paul Tisdale, who up to this point was basically the definition of a footballer who was a journeyman in his entire career. And we've seen the CV, we know who he played for, we know which football clubs he was involved with. But he reinvented himself as a football doctor, and he's obviously sold himself to Dermot Desmond, who, when the opportunity arose, gave him the job. He got the job. We questioned the CEO about this when we were up at Celtic Park back in October. They waffled through their answers because they are scared stiff of Dermot Desmond. That's just the way the culture is at Celtic Park. They are scared stiff to go against the grain, to do a deal without running it past the mustachioed one. They're scared stiff of it. And that's the situation that we are unfortunately in. So Paul Tisdale is then given this lofty position, the top job in the football department, head of football operations. He's running the show. And so when the opportunity arises to then bring in a new manager, prompted by yet another low point of 2025, that Monday night when Dermot Desmond somehow gets the login to the Celtic socials and the website and absolutely goes rogue. He goes rogue. He twirls his moustache a couple of times and boom, the magic dust. Brendan, you're out. Martin, you're in. And we were all shell-shocked. I was told at the time by my 8-year-old that I had to go and process my emotions. And he was right. I did. And I'm still trying to. It was absolute chaos. And that's what happens when you have someone with that level of control. You have ego coming into it. You have the megalomaniac traits. You have narcissism. You've got all of this thing. But it's basically, that's bred by having control. Control and power gives people an incredible sense of self-worth, and they are overbearing on subservience. And unfortunately, the people at the football club have just slotted in to these positions because they're getting paid such a great wage that they will never, ever earn. Let me put this on record. Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay will never earn 900 and 500 grand per annum in their life outside of Celtic Park. So they will bow to their master. They will bow to Dermot Desmond. That's what they have done. And what I would stress is that they all need to grow a set. They all need to, if they are Celtic men, as we are continually told that they are, then they need to grow a set. And I've got no doubt that they are Celtic men, right? They're in different positions to you and me in that they have a level of authority that can actually change the future journey and the future path of Celtic Football Club. Can you imagine having that level of authority, that power at your fingertips as a Celtic supporter? We're talking legacy here, and I think there's been a few legacies tainted in 2025. So we will talk about Peter Lawwell as well. Let's jump in. Kieran McNulty, no script today. There never is. I do normally have a list of topics that I want to discuss, and beyond the actual tagline, it's all up to you. Tell me what you want to discuss. Tell me which 2025 award you want me to present, and I will do so. I've already presented one today. Patrick McGilp, the rising star of Acsom. Kieran McNulty, PGD, is there any truth in the bust-up at halftime between Nancy and Tierney? Now, I'm going to bring Jungle Lion in, actually, because I'm kind of on this page when it comes to it. Rumours like this always rear their heads, don't they, when things aren't going well. And we've all seen them on WhatsApp. It's happened a million times, and it's happened this season a few times. It's happened in relation to the Stevie Woods rumours. It's happened with regards to the Nancy out rumours. And it's also happened, obviously, in recent times because at half-time, individuals were taken off against Motherwell, bizarre as it may be, but Nancy is known for making bizarre substitutions since he came to Celtic. A change had to happen. I don't agree with those particular personnel changes. But he did make the changes, and the rumour mill has gone into overdrive, hasn't it? That there's been a falling out. All I would say is this: if you're Kieran Tierney, right, because he's a guy that's been mentioned, he's been named. If you're Kieran Tierney, and we know what Celtic means to him, and he has flown the nest as many other Celtic greats have before him. He's flown the nest, and he's gone down to the Premiership, which apparently is every football player's dream, to play in that league. And he went and he played, and yes, he was hampered by injuries, but he was by no means a failure at Arsenal. All you need to do is ask Arsenal fans, look at the feedback online, on social media, if that's your thing. Arsenal fans loved Kieran Tierney. He spent some time in Spain. He comes back, other than maybe the fitness concerns, he comes back as a more rounded player with more experience. This is an individual who played for Arsenal in the semi-final of the Champions League. Did he play? He was certainly in the squad when Arsenal got to the semi-final of the Champions League. So he comes back, and it is really a return home for Kieran Tierney. What's he coming home for? Well, he's not coming home for this. He's not coming home for this shambles, this chaos that he has walked into, and that's what it is. It is shambolic at the moment at Celtic. So I've been looking at Kieran. Kieran's obviously played under 3 managers already since he came back to Celtic, and it has been a difficult season for everybody. Is he enjoying it? I'm looking at his celebrations. No, I'm not a body language expert, but again, as I said before, you can pick up things that in everyday life are truths. Is he enjoying it? Has he done this? I'm not saying for a moment he's regretting it. I see the face of a frustrated figure in Kieran Tierney. This is a guy who, you know, he's going to the World Cup. He scored that incredible goal for Scotland against his teammate Kasper Schmeichel in that amazing night, actually, for Scotland when we qualified for the World Cup finals. So in terms of all that, you know, it's not as if his football career has come off the rails. He's looking forward to the summer. But in terms of his club career, can you imagine the atmosphere in that Fir Park dressing room at half-time when Kieran Tierney, like you and me, and guys like Callum McGregor and Tony Ralston and James A. Forrest, and any other person who has got professional pride, actually. So not even that Celtic connection. And I'll come back to that because I put a tweet out about identity. Some people didn't agree with this, and that's probably the nuance of social media. You don't get an opportunity really to explain in a deeper sense what you actually mean. So I'm going to talk about Celtic's identity and how it can be damaged and how it can actually be lost in modern football. But Kieran Tierney, if you can imagine that shambles of a team, shambles of a shape, shambles of a performance, and he's sitting there at half-time, and he's played with Celtic legends, and he's played under legendary managers. Can I call Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers legendary managers? Can I call Neil Lennon a legendary manager? I think I can. I think I absolutely can do that. So he's playing under legendary managers, and he is watching this absolute drama unfold in front of his very eyes. Would he kick off? Why not? Why wouldn't he? Would you? I certainly would, because it's unraveling in front of his eyes. It's unraveling in front of your eyes. And I've often wondered, you know, there was a moment, I've just seen something popping up in what we call the green room. Not yet on the screen. This is what I was sitting in on that fateful day at Sky Sports when I had Jamie O'Hara try to set me up. But Kevin Graham's sitting down there, and I'm not comparing him to Jamie O'Hara for a moment. Kevin wears those glasses much better than Jamie ever could. But he'll be joining us in a second. Kieran Tierney, would it surprise me if he had stood up? I'm not saying kick off. If he had stood up to the manager, challenged the manager. These things happen. They've always happened. Very few managers in the history of Celtic will have been in a situation where they've not been faced with this challenge. No, it wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me. And then I think it's either happened the way that we've all read it, or people have put 2 and 2 together and said, well, you know, Kieran Tierney never turned up for the second half, therefore he's the guy that's challenged the manager. Dyson Maeda's stood up for him. So there's probably some half-truths in there, but I hope it is true. I hope it's true. I hope he has stood up, because I would do it, and so would Jungle Line, and so would everybody else in the chat. I'm pretty sure they would stand up to this shambles. And then, you know, hopefully at that point you would get the backing of your team. And I'm going to tell a very funny story before Kev Graham joins us on the stream today. Chris Sutton tells that story, doesn't he? He does. He tells that story particularly on the live stage, whereby he stands up for his team after a game in which Celtic have lost the title, and we've lost it to goal difference, which was the second time that happened, as you all know, under Martin O'Neill. And we lose the league on because of goal difference, and Rangers win the league, having absolutely wasted Dunfermline Athletic at Ibrox, managed by Jimmy Calderwood and Jimmy Nicholl. And Chris Sutton calls him out and said, we knew that Dunfermline would lie down to Rangers. We knew that would happen. And he says that live, but he says it in the knowledge that all his teammates think the same, and they're all going to stand up for him, and none of them do. So he gets hit with it. He gets hit with the ban. He gets hit with the hatred for the rest of his career whenever he is in the Fife area. Not by me. I don't hate Chris Sutton. I love the man. Right, okay, you're maybe a wee bit tired looking at my cooting, so here's a second one. Kev, the first thing I'm going to say is Happy New Year to you and yours. It's always an absolute pleasure to see you, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year to everybody, if you celebrate it. It's a bit weird, Dave, when we only celebrate this year because Julius Caesar says it was the start of the year. He just made it up when he changed the calendar, so because it used to be in March. So I didn't like doing anything Julius Caesar. Who's Julius Caesar to tell me what to do?
Well, he's
to celebrate the new year. I mean,
he's a pure substitute for Caesar, actually, isn't he? The real Caesar.
Definitely. No, if the real Caesar tell me to celebrate it on the 24th of February, I would. But it's just one of these strange things, that it's like a lot of these rituals that have came from ancient times. You wonder where they pick the dates for, or either just day.
Well, the thing with that, Kev, is it leads me on to what is indoctrination. And indoctrination's been born into a set of beliefs, right? A belief system. And within, let's say, an organisation or a football club, what is indoctrination? Well, as a fan, like you and just about everybody else, I'm sure, on the chat here, of which there are 2,400, I think indoctrination is into a set of beliefs and traditions of that football club that you support. I mean, you've spoken about your memories early growing up as a Celtic fan, and so have I. But I think that also exists within the club. You're indoctrinated into a football club. So if you're a brand new player coming into Celtic, you don't know really what the club's all about. You can do what everybody else does and check it out. You can pretend that as a young man in Kenya, you listen to Celtic games on the transistor radio, or as a young man in Italy, you always picked the green and white hoops when you played Subutio. You could pretend all this kind of stuff, but the indoctrination at a football club is part of the culture of that club, part of the identity of the football club, Kev. And I want to touch on that at some point today, but I also want to get as many comments in as possible. There's no script whatsoever. There's no agenda. It's over to the commenters today, Kev. But because you've popped in, you brought up the new year, and you have the one and only, the late, great Gary Manny Mountfield over your right-hand shoulder. I think it's only fitting to have a little minute to speak about the great man, because you and I have found ourselves in some, I don't know, surreal moments, since Acsom started. I'm pretty sure you'll agree. I certainly agree that you and I tend to find ourselves in surreal moments, like the time Alan McInally insisted that we called him Rambo when we were interviewing him, or like the time, like the time Sean Ryder is on a stage, and I'm looking at him thinking, this is the guy who in 1990 I modelled my curtains on, and now I'm on the stage with him. And you have all these moments, like, backstage, Martin O'Neill is met by Rab and James Allen of Las Vegas for a glass of wine. All these wee surreal moments, Kev, and you and I have shared quite a few of them. Like the time you went to the toilet in the toll booth and you were standing at urinal next to Frank McAvenny. All these different wee moments that have occurred to us. But one of the most unbelievable moments, pinch yourself moments, was just Manny. Just the whole Manny experience. It was incredible, wasn't it? And it's so sad that so soon after that appearance, which just so happened to be his last ever appearance live on stage, and it was with us, that he's gone. It feels like, if I'm going to tie it into the conversation today, that felt like an end of an era for me. And this feels like an end of an era for Celtic, and that's why we have to make big, massive changes.
With the Manny thing, I know for a fact that you had been trying to make it happen for years and years. Unfortunately, like the Roses getting back together and stuff like that got in the road, and a pandemic got in the way, and obviously further family life, tragic things that happened in his family life got in the way as well. So when you eventually got it over the line, it was absolutely brilliant. And obviously we didn't know that night what the future held. He was a really genuine guy that night. He gave time for absolutely everybody. I was very. He got that scarf for the Blantyre Manny CSC, and that was one of the first things I noticed when I watched the funeral footage that was in the coffin, on the coffin as well. No? And I was like, wow, that is quite that is a link back to that night. Yes, it's very, as you say, it's probably an end of an era. Especially in Manchester, I think. I mean, if folk would have said out of that era, who would be the first Manchester legend to go from that era? Nobody would have said, but that's that. Life dealt him a very, very good hand, but also dealt him a very sad hand as well. And it's dealt his family a very, very sad hand. This is two boys I feel sorry for. I really do feel sorry for the two boys. And there is a lot of these guys, sometimes you think they just play up to being Celtic fans. And I've been lucky enough to meet two guys who were in my two other favourite bands, the Stone Roses and the Primal Scream. And both of them were, Andrew Innes of the Primal Scream and Manny, were genuine Celtic fans. And sometimes, especially if the English Premiership was invented in 1992, you had a load of these guys, especially during Britpop, you had a load of these guys jumping on the football bandwagon, going, aye, we support Chelsea. I still didn't believe Damien Albarn supports Chelsea. I still didn't believe that. But a couple of years before that, these guys were talking about football and stuff like that. So it's really pleasing that they were genuine Celtic fans. But it's a really, really sad loss, and I'll always go with that guy.
You whispered in his ear. You whispered in his ear before he came on the stage.
I know, and I wished I could remember what I says, but I was kind of 6 pint deep at the time. I can't remember what I says. So, I remember the first thing I says to him, I just says thanks. I just went, thank you.
There was a beautiful moment.
That's all I needed to say,
well, this is the thing. I said it in my kind of introduction speech, and I thought long and hard about the introduction to bring him on the stage. But, you know, people think you're mad if you're so into things like football and music. People think you're mad when you say, that changed my life, that changed my life. That band did change my whole outlook on many, many things. And, you know, then you're in a car with a guy. Then you're in the backstage area with a guy. And what happened that night, by the way, we're going to jump back into the football in a second. What happened that night is that John Squire's son was in the audience, Dylan Squire, an aspiring musician who's based in Scotland. And Manny's his godfather. And they hadn't seen each other since Manny's wife had sadly passed away. So they, in the backstage area, had seen each other for the first time since Imelda's passing, Dylan's godmother. And there was this embrace and just this moment where it was like, right, everybody out, just leave the two guys to it, because they've got a wee bit of catching up to do. And that's the power of Acsom, Kev, right? But it's, you know, going back a further stage, that's the power of Celtic. And I think what we've done here today, 2,800 on New Year's Day, we've got Celtic fans coming in, because what we do, what we try and do, and what's pretty obvious that we do, and we have done, is we create a platform. Now, you might disagree with everything that we say, but at least we're creating a platform to give you the opportunity to disagree with it, to give you the opportunity to make your own suggestions, give us your own opinions. Because the minute something goes wrong at Celtic, their media team, and I got this clarified yesterday, and I forgot if it was 20 or 30, apparently they've got 30 members of the media team. They all go into hiding, Kev. They don't give you the platform. They don't engage with you online. Sometimes the Twitter page just shuts down for 24 hours. Don't speak to us, you know, and then the next fixture comes up. What Acsom and what fan media is doing, we're giving you the opportunity to come in and speak. Tomo says, avoid toxic atmosphere, get rid now. Tomo's talking about the fact that in a couple of days' time, We're playing Rangers at Celtic Park. We're playing Rangers, Kev, and Rangers are no great shakes. Absolutely not. You know, Hearts are no great shakes, and neither are Motherwell. But what they are is they are organised. They have a game plan, and the players are playing to the manager's game plan. I was very impressed with Motherwell. I think what they did the other night was fantastic when you look at the budgets, Kev, when you look at the size of that football club, the support base and the scope to improve and grow. The potential of a Motherwell versus the potential of a Celtic. We are underperforming massively. And I think Motherwell are performing to the level that they should. I've said this so many times, Kev. A lot of these teams have underperformed for years. Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee United. I don't normally mention Motherwell, but they've probably underperformed since Stephen Robinson was the manager and we were at cup finals with Marvin Compere. They've probably underperformed since then. And what we're doing now is we're underperforming, and there's a trajectory where we've come down to a level, and some of these teams, your Hearts and your Hibs, and let's be honest, even Rangers compared to the beginning of the season have improved, and they're going up the scale, and we're meeting, and some of them are overtaking us. So avoid the toxic atmosphere. I was hoping that an announcement would have been made yesterday, Kev. We've all heard the rumours that there's been meetings. There's been board members actively saying, make the decision now. Other ones kicking back. And I think that the ones kicking back are because they are so scared of this link, which takes us from Nancy to Tisdale to Desmond. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to go against what Desmond's decision has been. Because he's the secondary character in this show if Paul Tisdale's the main character in bringing Nancy to the football club, Kev. So where are we? Are we going to make the change, and when?
It's quite difficult. I mean, if you look to folk that are maybe more well connected to us, they were saying that the board were 50-50, getting rid of them, and Desmond overruled them and says, no, we're sticking, which kind of goes against what I would kind of believe would have happened. I says a couple of weeks ago when we first appointed him, I was going, I think Desmond will pull the plug on this quite quick to prove that he was right all along. There could, if you wanted to go down like the conspiracy theory route, that he could go like, you wanted us to rip this up and start again, now we've ripped up and start again, and now you're moaning. You can lie in your own bed and get on with it. But then it gets to a point when Desmond goes, I'll prove that I was right all the time. And I'll come in and save you, like I've done before previously. He could have that way of thinking, but then he just can't really believe that a football club would self-sabotage itself. But then you look at the last transfer windows in the last 6 months, and everything that we seem to do is just like pressing the self-destruct button, and it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
Even having a look at it now, changing when we did was very unlike Celtic, because we're very risk averse, as we all know. So changing in that point of December when you had Martin O'Neill in charge, knowing full well that you had a wee conversation with him, and that's him to the end of the season, and you've got a bit of breathing space there. Even then, that was very, very unlike Celtic. So we're now in a situation where you thought you were able to read maybe what was going to happen, but you're going, well, are we going to be able to read? So if you look at history, we only ever sack a manager during a season when it's too late, when everything's gone, when there's nothing left for us. So are they actually believing that they can actually give this guy a load of loan signings in January and we sneak across the line in what is one of the worst leagues in years? That could be their thinking. I mean, you look at it, how many league games we've lost, 4 league games, and we're still only 3 points behind Hearts. But you could argue there's a 4-way race now for the title. And instead of being in a battle for the Champions League, we could be in the battle for a Europa League spot. The way things are going. When I left Motherwell on Tuesday night, I wanted them gone before I was back in Stirling.
Yeah,
I was going just this cause Motherwell on Tuesday night. I felt sorry for him at Tannadice. I thought the players let him do it at Tannadice, and I thought the players let him do it again the other night. I really did, but he was clueless the other night. He was absolutely clueless. It was like the cup final all over again. It was quite weird that some of my supporters they were up the top tier and I was down the bottom tier, so they were getting a full view of the park. And when you were talking to them on the way home, they were going, it was completely shambolic watching it up there. Nobody knew what they were meant to be doing. Nobody knew what they were actually like, how to press, when to press. There was one point that Cal McGregor, who's one of your two pivots, ran 20 yards to press ran more than 30 yards to press the Motherwell goalkeeper, and he bypassed Atati and Negron. Just bypassed them to go and press. They knocked the ball across and the charge through and goal, and I'm going, there's no clue there when to go, when not to go, what shape they're actually meant to be in. On the lower level, though, watching it from the lower tier, you could tell that the players didn't want the ball. Mm-hmm. You could tell. I was on the right hand side, so the right hand side in the first half, hour left in the second. So you're looking at that right hand side, and Ralston's getting the ball, and Yang's hiding. Yang does not want that ball whatsoever, because he knows for a fact that the boy that's man marking him is not going to give him a minute. A couple of times they gave the ball to Negron, and he had a fear in his face that he was getting the ball, and he didn't. He tried to get rid of it as quick as possible. The players bottled it, and the players were the players were just as much a disgrace all the night there as what the manager was, truthfully, when you actually watch it. Nancy was going on about the shy that led to the Motherwell first goal. And when they were taking the shy, because it was across that way, and I'm looking, you can actually see what Nancy's doing. Nancy's telling the back three to get out. Like, what he's doing sitting that deep, get out. And then the ball goes in. I think it's Schmeichel. I think Schmeichel should come out and get that. Thought that at the time. But you could actually see him shouting, get out. What he's doing sitting that deep. Because I maybe give him a bit of credit here. Maybe he could see what was actually coming. Like, but the players ignored them. The players completely ignored them. And Trusty, the wee boy up front for him going to Trusty's, he'd be having that sly kick at him. Trusty lost the plot, and a couple of minutes later the boy scores because Trusty's trying to do him.
He's been guilty of that before with Simon Murray.
We've had previous with that as well. So it was just dreadful. I mean, the other night there was like watching PSG play Socky Juniors. That's how big the gulf was. And I says in the comments in the group chat on the way home, on that evidence the other night there, not one Celtic player would get in that Motherwell side. Not one would get in that Motherwell side.
I can't argue with that. Motherwell outplayed us, Kev. They bossed us. Absolutely bossed us.
Completely bossed us, and fair play to them. They know what they're doing. And you've got guys like McGinn and O'Donnell in that team who are no great football players, but they know what they're actually doing. Mm-hmm. We were utterly chaotic, and even the subs were utterly chaotic. I was trying to work out, going, who's he took off? Why is he took off Tierney? Why is he took off Maeda? What has he actually done here? Then the first ball goes to Shin at the edge of the box, and he can have a clue. He can have a look at it. He go, has that boy actually ever seen a football before? Because he didn't know what he was actually doing, where he was, how to trap the ball. He had no concept of what was going on round about him. I'm going, this is a disaster.
But how was that player identified, Kev? You've got to ask that question. How was he identified, right?
Well, as the paper says, if you're talking Japanese or turning Japanese, then you can actually recommend players to Celtic, yeah?
Well, I'll tell you something in relation to that. Liam Carrigan and I had this discussion around about the time that we signed Kyogo, because we said we should have been tapping into that market ever since Nakamura was at the football club. And again, people say, but we signed him from Reggiana. I get that, but he's a Japanese player coming from the J League, right? And he obviously went to Italy and then he came to Celtic. And we should have been tapping into the J League since then. We never did, Kev. We never did. Now, and in relation to that, it's not difficult. You have people based in that region who could give you a lowdown on all the top quality players in every single position, because you're simply watching the league. Like you could do that with the Scottish League, right? Mm-hmm. And then at that point, we could then start the proper scouting and the data and all the rest of it. We never did that. And then we had the specialist knowledge of Ange coming over, and it was like, I know who the best players are in that league because I've been managing there. Let's bring some of them over. But I felt at the time that Inamura and Shin Yamada was a bolt out of the blue, because, we are not as good as what people think we are when it comes to this part of the football club, identifying players, Kev, having eyes and ears all over the place in all these different regions. We got lazy. I remember running a show with you where I think we called them fat and lazy. It was a mentality. It wasn't calling anybody physically fat, but when you get fat and lazy because everything's so easy and successful, and it's just like, you just throw money at things and hope that solves the problem. Celtic got to the point where we were basically relying on recommendations from agents who come to us and offering us X, Y, and Z, and we knew.
Even the last successful transfer window was recommendations by agents, and Postecoglou known guys that would fit his system.
That was I think it was more focused in that the agent or agents we were using, Kev, did have that scope of players, that pool of players, and the quality was different. Because we know, obviously, Ange and Frank Trimboli work together. Trimboli is part of the CAA base, which is a global scouting network, a global agency, right? Not just for football. I mean, they look after superstars all over the world. We no longer deal with them, Kev. I find that absolutely insane. That the agency that provided us with so much talent, we don't deal with them. Why? Because the relationship's broken down. And so when you're looking at, right, so how did we identify the two lads in Japan who have come over here? And like Nancy, look as though they're in the wrong movie. I agree with you. Kevin looks as though he doesn't know how to play. I said like something very, very simple, and something that Maeda's brilliant at and Kyogo used to be brilliant at, is very, very unexpectedly for the player, getting in front of the player. Getting in front of people going about, the ghosting of Abada at the back, getting in front of a player. Shinya Mara cannot do that. He cannot do that. So what he tries to do is he takes a yard behind them and just hopes that the player misses the ball, Kev. 99% of the time, the player's not going to miss the ball.
It's quite a damning statement at this precise moment in time that you can actually say Johnny Kenny looks a more natural footballer, a more natural centre forward than Shinya Yamada. At least Kenny knows what he's meant to be doing, and he has missed quite a few chances. His confidence got to be shot, but then it was only you think back to the semi-final. Kenny was immense. The Rangers backline couldn't handle Kenny that day, because we were doing the simple things. It's really. I mean, me and you can go down a park, and I sometimes go and watch my wee local team, the Malton. And there was a guy up front last season playing for I think it was St Pat's. Was it St Pat's or St Joseph's? St Pat's. And this young guy, he must have been about 21, 22, and within about 30 seconds, I went, what's he doing playing at this level? Like, you could just tell by the movement, his touch, right away you went, what's he doing playing at this level? And you often wonder, when we go and scout guys, there's an eye test, right? You can use all the data all you want, but there is an eye test. It doesn't matter if you read all the books about the data. What sometimes fails is when clubs just look at data and didn't actually go and see a player. There's a hybrid of the two. Somebody has to go and watch this guy and go, by the way, he has got something, eh? But there's some of the guys that we've seen over the last 3 seasons, we've just had a look at and go, who's actually watched them? Who's actually went, by the way, they've actually got something about us. And this has been a gradual decline over since 2020, since we brought in Alistair Johnson. That window there, since that window there, this has been a gradual decline, where usually 50% of your signings fail anyway for a number of reasons. That's just the way it is. But we must be up about 90% of them since that point have failed. And now that's what we've got to look at. So then what actually happens? You end up with the worst squad that we've had in years. We've had our worst 12 months.
Because you're still selling. You're still selling your best quality. Yeah.
You're still selling your best quality. So you've got the worst squad that you've had for years. Then you've completely downgraded with the guy in the dugout. You've completely kind of went, right, we're going to rip everything up and starting again. And you're replacing Brendan Rodgers. No matter your feelings about Brendan Rodgers whatsoever, you've replaced him with a guy who has not got the testicular fortitude to actually be in that dugout after Brendan Rodgers. That is the bottom line. And then you've got the club itself sabotaging itself with the fan base, the constant arguments, because we are now pointing it out, going, by the way, this has been a gradual decline. everybody's looking at the last 6 months. How many games did we lose in 2025? 17 or something like that. It was a kind of lost count towards the end. A kind of lost count towards the end of the game. This has been a decline since February. It was there in the cup final. It's just got worse because we've done nothing to rectify it in the summer. So anybody that's surprised that we're at this point shouldn't really be. O'Neill papered over the cracks, but that's because O'Neill is a fantastic manager. And Maloney's probably got a wee bit of more sense of the Scottish game, and he knows what he's actually going to need to do.
Or just football. Sean,
maybe just football, maybe just football.
The understanding just the football, Kev, in respect to, being able to set up in a system where everybody on the park knows what they're doing. The absolute fundamentals of any football team. We don't even have that at the moment under Nancy. Sean Maloney could come in right now and put that side of it right. I'm not saying that he is the answer, but I'll tell you something, I'd have him right now before Nancy, taking us in against Rangers.
You could take any of them, even though Stephen McManus's B team is no pulling up no setting any header. Like, he could come in and set the team up better. Jim Goodwin could come in and set the team up better. This is no me advocating for a Jim Goodwin. I'm just saying anybody with a wee bit of sense of the Scottish game could come in and actually set that team up better. And it is galling. It was funny, I was reading an article in The Athletic yesterday when they were talking about Nancy's replacement at Columbus Crew. And the boy that wrote the article saying, the Swedish boy that's gone in there, I can't remember his name, apologies to any Malmo fans that are watching, when he's replacing the best coach in the MLS. That's what the guy wrote in The Athletic. And I think I read it about 5 times going, really? If he was the best coach in the MLS, he would have come in and brought these guys with him step by step. Not just coming in and ripping it up. And for me, you were talking about tipping points yesterday. My tipping point was probably against Roma when he actually set up like that. I'm going, mate, you've lost the plot here. You didn't know what is going on here. And even at Livingston on Saturday, coming out of the game, somebody says, "Oh, that's a bit better. That's a bit better." I went, a bang average team's going to drive a bus through us. Still, I enjoyed the win. It was a nice wee win, nice wee day out. But as I say, it's a bang average team would have drove a bus through us.
And the thing is here, by the way, this isn't a dig at anybody. You support football for these simple moments of winning games, Kev, celebrating goals, celebrating victories, jumping on that bus and coming home, and it puts a spring in your step. Football does affect your emotions. But after the Livingston game, and in actual fact after the Aberdeen game, we as a platform were criticised for being too negative towards Nancy. But all we were doing is pointing out the obvious, Kev, the absolute obvious, whereby, we won the games 3-1, 4-2. We won the games. However, we were wide open, and a better team would target that, and they could drive a bus through our defence. That's what's happened there with Motherwell. No great shakes, much improved, doing great things at that level, and they not just competently but confidently beat us with a bit of style, beat us, as I say, put us to the sword and absolutely bossed us. Lots of great comments coming through.
Sorry, before you go into the comments, again, this is we'll answer the comments. The boy that scored the second goal for him, the wee number 20 or 21 in the middle of the park.
Elliot Watt,
right? I've seen Motherwell a couple of times, and I was going, we're playing with a 2. We're playing with a 2 there. Why does one of those 2, Negrin or Tati, just not go and stand on him? Because everything Motherwell done went through him. Just go and stand on him. Just go, right, I'm not going to give you the space, because we've seen it done with McGregor plenty of times. But it was absolutely clueless. Made that wee boy look like Xavi.
And there's no doubt he's got a bit about him. You look at his previous, his kind of youth development as a footballer, Kev. He's one of the guys that's had to go backwards to then take a sideward step to then get to Motherwell. And he's done really well. And again, but at the same time, we should be able to deal with that. We should be able to manage that in terms of a challenge in match, Kev. And again, this is another thing, and I think it's a good point you made. There's a lot of things we as a team, as individuals, have to be able to deal with in match, and we're not dealing with that as well.
We haven't been able to deal with man-to-man marking for 12 months now. It was a problem under Rogers, and it's even worse under Nancy now because of the way that we play. That's
no doubt about it. I'm going to give you my take on some of the things that should happen at Celtic in terms of new chairman and new manager, because as I say, it's the 1st of January, absolutely it is. But you know, when we're talking about Celtic's a 365-day endeavour a year, and decisions have to be made. Kev, you're walking back to your bus after the Fir Park debacle, right? If Celtic were bold enough, as I'm walking back to the Beechwood after we beat Hearts, if Celtic are bold enough to appoint Neil Lennon after that game, then they should be bold enough to make an opposite change, and that opposite change being it's over. This hasn't worked, and we can actually pick up the pieces and try and salvage something from this season. Because if you continue and you just continue on this track with the same manager, with the same guy identifying the talent in Paul Tisdale, not identifying a single bit of talent yet, and you go into January and you then back that facade, then charade, then you are in great risk, I believe, of having a number of other players who are going to be added to the lack of quality that we already have. And it's going to take quite a long time, Kev, to get back to the requisite state of quality that you need to be challenging in Scotland. And Kev, this is what really frustrates the life out of me. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm going to have to bring up Bayern Munich. But at that point, we're in the Champions League, Kev, right? There's a klaxon, right? But there is a point to this. At that moment, we're in the Champions League. Not only are we in the Champions League, it's a new format and we're doing all right. And we can actually see that, yeah, we're going to get beat off Borussia Dortmund. We're going to get beat off of PSG and Barcelona. However, we can pick up enough points to end up in that middle section of this league and get at least another 2 games in the Champions League, knockout games in the Champions League. And then we can use the financial element of that, the income stream that brings, Kev, to start building incrementally season on season. And if you do that 5 times, maybe you're looking at that playoff and saying, oh, we might win the playoff now. Okay, you get into the last 16. And that is called European progression. And that's the conversation we've been having since February. Look at the conversation we're having now, Kev. The conversation now is, will we qualify for the Europa League? Will we qualify? So in terms of expectations, right, they have taken our expectations of, yeah, European progression, and they've dragged us right back into the crab bucket. That's what they've done. How dare you try to aspire to something out with this bucket of crabs? In you come, you're going to be fighting with the Motherwells and the Hearts just to stay a point ahead of Rangers. And they've done it, Kev.
And they've done it, and they will continue doing it, because I've said on here often enough, they'll have a look at what's going on. They'll have a look at Hearts' budget. They'll have a look at Rangers' budget, and they'll downsize accordingly. If they have the says in the figures, this is the highest wage bill we've ever had. I can guarantee you that's the first thing that they're going to try and cut.
But Kev, because it's the highest wage bill, right? Here you go. Here comes the ambition, right? That's the highest wage bill. What do we do about it? I don't even think about cutting it. I think about, well, let's make more money. How do you do that? We're the biggest income streams of Champions League. Let's make sure we're prepared for the Champions League. And see that wage bill, it's not even a consideration.
You maintain the wage bill, but you reduce the number in the squad.
You do that as well, because we've got, again, far too many non-contributing players. And how often have we been talking about that, Kev, since Acsom started? Carrying a squad with a surplus of 6 to 8 to 12 players who you could cut and it would make no difference to the output. And we, for some strange reason, think you can go out and buy 8 players instead of 3. Aye. You know, and we keep doing that, Kev, because we were shooting fish in a barrel previously, and we managed to get a Van Dijk and a Wanyama and an Izagiri and all these guys that came through and did well. But what about the plethora of guys who didn't? From Barigta to Bangura and many, many others, Kev. You've actually hit on something, and I'm going to check on this for next week, probably. And it will be that, since the first season under Ange, what is the hit rate? I'm going to go through every single signing since that first season with Ange.
Off the top of my head, I think it's since that first season, it's been about 90%, I think. And I'll be counting Ida for that 6-month loan and the Champions League last season. Probably could I, but it's I think we're sitting about 90%.
You reckon 1 in 10 signings have been a success? 1 in 10?
Yes. Aye.
I'm going to look at it, Kev. I'm going to list them. I'm going to give the audience my view on it, and then you can agree or disagree. Some of them are pretty obvious.
I think Kuhn and Ida are probably the best window that we had couldn't for his 4 months that we had, and either because he probably won us the goals that done us a double that year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think we followed that up. I think we followed that winter window up with a summer window that I would argue all day long was a good window. And I'm talking the trusty Ida Engels window, because what did we do that season? We win the double and we progress in the Champions League. We almost win a treble. So it's about the outcome rather than the individual sometimes. I don't think either of those 3 players in that season was a flop. I really don't. And I know that people will say, but Engels or but, Ida. In that season, if you were to, and again, sometimes I do this, take yourself out of the emotion of it when we're looking back at that season and, you're not so emotionally invested in it. I think you will look at it and say, we did, and I'm not going to argue, we did overpay for all 3 players, Kev, probably by £2 million each. We overpaid for all 3 players. But that again comes to the negotiations with Nicholson and Mackay. But in terms of signings, when I go through these, I'm going to say those 3 signings were hits rather than misses. But the amount of misses that we've had outweighs that massive. I'm going to say at the moment 75%. But I mean, that's just off the top of my head. But I'm going to look through every single player. Has Maresca been sacked? Yes, he has parted ways with Chelsea. He's a manager who has been quoted many, many times as a future Celtic manager due to his links with the City group. I'm going to bring in some more comments, Kev, before I get to the point of the chairman. So here we go. Jungle Lion, if Nicholson is on over 10k a week, staggering. His obviously, he's got a flat rate, and then he's got his bonus, and with the bonus on top, it was over 800 grand. Over 800 grand that he made from Celtic.
Is there any other CEOs of a company with a turnover of Celtic on that sort of money?
Well, Jim Orr made this point that if Celtic don't win the league, having had £77 million in September in the bank, a CEO and 800 grand, a CFO and 500 grand, if we don't win the league, there is no argument, Kev. No one can come on here, no one can go on the socials and stand up for the board. There's no argument. I already think there's no argument, incidentally. Here we go. Lauren, welcome to the show, Lauren. I hope you're well. You're on the YouTube, and I hope that you are enjoying 2026 so far, because Celtic haven't played yet. The Talbot will, Auchinleck Talbot, I'm telling you, man. Let's have a look at the list of Celtic fixtures.
You're trying to cheer me up here.
Yeah, I'm going to cheer you up. In 17 days, we play Auchinleck Talbot. I'm just just letting that one go out there. People can make
but we've got Rangers, Dundee United at home, then Falkirk away first, then Auchinleck Talbot.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And you ask yourself, you sometimes, followed by Bologna and then Hearts away, by the way. So you look at groups of games, Kev, and you say, right, where's the difficult game? All 6 of them. All 6 of them at the moment are difficult games. Now, by the way, I remember your pie story with Inverness Cali. Declan McConville, previously of Acsom, was born the day Inverness Cali beat us 3-1. Auchinleck Talbot will score against this Celtic team. That's my prediction. Auchinleck Talbot will score against the Celtic team.
I think my supporters club could score against the Celtic team.
Maresca has left Chelsea by mutual agreement. There will always be options in terms of managerial candidates. I think that Celtic need to go and lick their wounds.
Me and Brian shouted for Maresca when Ange went. Yeah, that was the boy that we shouted for, because there was a City group link at that point. I think what he's done with Chelsea is probably out of our league, because he has been a success at Chelsea.
You get managers, when they hit a certain level, Kev, I think what they want to do is bounce around those top leagues, because it's not just their salary, but it's also that when they get there, the budget that they have to strengthen the team and what they want to do. I always remember this. I think it was when we were talking about Rafa Benitez, which incidentally was a possibility at one time. It was a possibility. Was it after? I'm trying to think of the timeline here. Didn't he was without a job just after we appointed Neil Lennon first time round permanently, I think. I would need to double check that. Second time. And with relation to that, I had a good discussion with Paddy McCourt, because we were doing an event that week. And Paddy says to me that these managers, they want to be able to win a European trophy. For that to be an aspiration, Kev. Can I win a European trophy with Celtic? can I win a European trophy with Chelsea? You know, and there's other teams in England and in Spain, etc., where the answer is far more likely to be yes than it is at the moment with Celtic. Any European trophy, that's what they want to do. So, yeah.
And he's done it. He won the Conference League last year.
Well, Maresca's not going to come to Celtic and win a European trophy unless we have a vision, Kev. We need to sell somebody like that a vision. See somebody like Maresca who's fallen foul of the English Premiership, where it's just the churn rate in managers is just frightening, right? I mean, you just got to look at Ange Postecoglou to Nottingham Forest, right? We need to attract a manager like that, and the only way you can attract them is with vision and ambition. You need to say, "This is my 5-year vision. We want you to be part of it."
I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to go Jamie O'Hara here on us, but our chance to get Maresca was when he was the assistant in Man City and he was looking to break himself.
Yeah.
That was your chance. That was your chance, and I'm no hangman Celtic with that. If you're trying to get somebody that's had no connection to the club, you've got to get them when they're at a certain level. Maresca's new. Maresca will probably end up getting the Man United job.
Kev, there's a trajectory in a footballer's career, and there's a trajectory in a manager's career. Quite simple, where the trajectory goes up, hits a peak, and then it comes down, and there's a flat line somewhere about a third of the way down the page, right? And we can get them on the way up and we can get them on the way down on the same line. But we can't get them once they've gone past that trajectory. No. We can only get them on the way back down. So I get what you mean. And it's the same with players. It is the same with players, Kevin. Kasper Schmeichel and Joe Hart, these guys were unattainable when they had gone through that trajectory. You know, what's Kasper Schmeichel's trajectory? Playing for Falkirk. At that point, you can get him. What's Joe Hart's playing with Shrewsbury? At that point, you can get the guy. But once they get into the point of winning championships rather down in England, Kev, you've got no chance until they've hit the peak and they're on the downward trajectory. So absolutely, and I think Maresca probably is still above that bottom line where Celtic can get him. So unless we were as bold as when did we last do that? Probably with Brendan. Andrew's on the rise when we get him, right? Brendan wasn't he on the? I don't think he was on the downward spiral at that point, Kev. When we got that was a big appointment. Let's not forget, we got the ex-Liverpool manager. He could have got, I'm pretty sure, another job in the top half of the English Premiership when we got him.
At the time when we were looking for a manager at that time, Rodgers was the top that we could have got. And we ended up getting him. And so was Martin O'Neill at the time. Because he was one of the top 3 managers in Britain when we got him in 2000. There was Ferguson, Wenger and O'Neill.
And by the way, Kev, you've written something brilliant, and I've read it about those moments and that decision and how it happened and how it unfolded. You've done a lot of research on it, and I agree with you that when we appointed Martin O'Neill, when we appointed Brendan Rodgers first time round, they had options in England and they were the best manager we could possibly appoint. That doesn't mean to say every managerial appointment goes down that line. Ange Postecoglou proved that. He absolutely approved that. What type of a manager do we need right now? We need a manager to stabilise this football club. Never mind, take it on. We need a manager to stabilise the football club. It was teetering. It was teetering. Then Martin O'Neill came in and it was proper, like, taping up all the big wounds, Kev, right? But I've used this analogy. I know you love an analogy, right? But when that wee stain appears on your ceiling and you know that there's a leak in your water tank up in the loft, you don't get the emulsion it. No. You get somebody up that loft who'll have a look at your water tank. Celtic, unfortunately, have let that drip and drip and drip. And the ceiling, if it hasn't done so already, is about to cave in. What we need to do is go up there, not only just tweak a few dials on the water tank, we need to replace the water tank and we need to start again. End of an era stuff. Patrick McGill was talking about it yesterday, Kev. I don't think I had even considered that. This is the end of that 25-year.
Aye.
O'Neill comes in to the end of 2025, right? So now we're not going to be accustomed to that level of dominance and success unless we change, Kev. So I'm going to start with the chairman. Who comes in?
It's not really something that I've actually thought about. I know you're a big advocate of Willie Hockey to come in and change it. I just want somebody to come in and have who is qualified to be the chairman, first thing. No, I've heard, everybody's heard the Gordon Strachan stuff and like that. But somebody that's coming in that's not being connected at any one point and coming and just have an overview of how we actually do things. Bring a fresh voice to the proceedings. I think we need it all in the boardroom. I think the main one for me is your head of football operations needs to be somebody who's actually doing it at a sort of level that we would want. And I know you look at Rangers and the boy that they've just sacked as well was doing it at a decent level as well. And these things can actually fall apart. But is Paul Elliott not doing that sort of job?
He's a chief. He's a second in command at Charlton Athletic.
Right,
He's
okay.
Vice chair. He's a vice chair.
Again, the chairman's likely to be somebody that has got Desmond's back. So
this is the point, Kev. This is the point where I interject. That's where the Gordon Strachan rumours are coming from.
Aye.
And that's why I think there is an element in truth of truth in that. It would not surprise me if Dermot Desmond wants Gordon Strachan in as chairman, right? One of the main reasons I have been an advocate of Willie Hawkey to come in is because he would not be that stooge. He would not be that stooge to Dermot Desmond. It would not happen. He would step up and stand up. And by the way, I go back to the point of the job description. If you were to define what is a chairman, generically, this is Celtic, right? And what we've already found is that certain roles, Kev, are quite relaxed when it comes to Celtic and who's got dominance and who's got influence, right? So it's not just you're in the chairman's role and you do not veer out of that role. You can be very dominant in that role, unlike in many other businesses, Kev. And when you need to step up and stand up, because at the moment, nobody, this is the issue, at no point is anybody standing up to Dermot Desmond in that boardroom. Nobody. Not one individual at the football club is standing up to Dermot Desmond. If you stand up to him, even in a secondary sense in a press conference or when you're talking to the news, he will obliterate you. He will get it out, and he will absolutely destroy your reputation in a public way. And that's what he done to Brendan Rodgers. And everybody is so scared that I'm doing the same to them, right, that they don't step up and stand up. So the Gordon Strachan rumours, I think there is weight to them because he's the type of person, and I've got a huge respect for Gordon Strachan, incidentally. He's a type of person who is in Dermot's camp. Dermot Desmond knows he can trust him. Dermot Desmond knows he's not going to stand up to him. By the way, Brendan Rodgers was in that camp and he's been booted right out of it and he'll never return. Willie Hawkey wouldn't allow that.
I would also see Peter Lawwell was in that camp, and I think the problem has been since Lawwell was sidelined a certain way because there is a lack of leadership in that club, real lack of leadership in that club.
I'd been hearing this, Kev, in the past. You know how it just seems at the moment that it's gone a bit wild. It's totally chaotic behind the scenes.
It's been like you even speak to Urdas who are of a certain vintage as they've not seen anything like this.
No,
it's probably nothing been like this since the late 50s, early 60s.
The lunatics have taken over the asylum. They're running wild. Dermot Desmond is running amok. And I ran that as a headline one day, and I'm probably on a hit list because of it. But I asked the question, Kev, why didn't this happen before? And I think the legitimate answer is this. There were people at Celtic who were able to kind of manage the situation. You've probably worked with folk. You're probably pals with folk on a night out where you're putting out fires all night because they're creating absolute chaos and you're following up, you're putting out fires and you're keeping everything on a level. Now, apparently...
It's usually me. You're usually putting out my fire, mate.
you need a wingman, right? So I think that's Celtic. I don't think Dermot's changed his approach. I think what's happened is the people who used to be able to keep an even keel on things are no longer there. So you ask your question, who are they? Love them or loathe them. It was Peter Lawwell as a CEO. Not the Peter Lawwell that we're seeing at the moment out at grass, like an ex-racehorse who's just sitting in a field somewhere and the grass is getting longer. That's Peter Lawwell as Celtic's chairman. The Peter Lawwell as a CEO was a powerhouse, Kev. A colossal figure, right? And from what I've heard, he was one of the people who would do that. He would go toe-to-toe with Dermot Desmond. He would keep him in line as much as you can. And you know who else I've heard? Tom Allison. Now, Tom Allison was Peter Lawwell's boss in a previous life. Tom Allison is completely under the radar at the moment at Celtic. You will not see him in the images of the board at any stadium, Celtic Park included, and he may leave the Celtic board at some point. He's obviously been voted on for the next season, if you like, of this drama. But they're the two that I've heard were keeping Dermot in check. Those two are no longer active at Celtic, Kev, and the thing has went absolutely chaotic. So what we need is people at the football club, right? And this is, again, why I've mentioned Willie Hockey a number of times, who wouldn't allow that to happen, who bring a calmness to the situation. Sometimes that calmness only happens after a battle with the person that's creating the chaos, right? That AGM cannot happen again, Kev. That was an embarrassment to Celtic Football Club. And I'm not blaming Jeanette Finlay for taking the stance that she took. I'm not blaming Jeanette. I'm of the view that Celtic didn't deal with any challenge, whatever the challenge was going to be, if it was a red card or a sack the board or somebody asking to skip the videos, because that's all Jeanette was doing. Celtic didn't deal with it properly or professionally.
The thing is, they knew it was coming.
Of course they did.
They knew exactly what was coming because somebody would have told them. As soon as it was decided what was happening, somebody would have ran back to them and told them. So they knew what was coming. And the reason that you know that they knew what was coming was when Peter Law put his hand up. Right away, he knew what was going on. And I don't know.
Ross Desmond had that pre-prepared script, which was damning of the Celtic support. So they did know what was coming, Kev.
Which should have been shot down by Peter Law. You can't say that. He just can't. He just cannot do that because it's a shambles. You say there is a power vacuum, but where we are on the football field, something like that, you're hoping that Desmond actually takes leave of his senses and just goes, right, I'm stopping this just now, and I'm going back to what we know.
I'm going to run through the final comments that I have saved here. Right, the first one being Charlie Connolly and Motherwell players respect their manager. Clearly, they are believing in his system. They're following what the vision is. Barry Boy reckons we're just waiting on the stock exchange reopening, potentially. Regino, I'm going to bring this up because you're wrong in the respect of saying that someone who changes their view based on new evidence being presented to them is flip-flopping. Prior to Martin O'Neill coming to the football club, I wouldn't have gone anywhere near Sean Maloney as a manager. I actually thought that he was brought in this role of pathway manager as a ruse almost to finally become the Celtic manager. And at the time, I spoke out about that because it's not right. I don't think at that point he had done enough to be Celtic's manager. Absolutely not. But something happened and something changed. And it wasn't just my opinion. It was evidence. It was his involvement in that run of games which stabilised Celtic's season, which breathed new life into our league challenge, which got us into a League Cup final, and which gave us a really memorable result that we'll be talking about for years in terms of European performance in the Europa League. So that's not flip-flopping. That's taking new evidence and not being so stubborn to stick to your original point and dying on a hill because you said something. And at the time, I actually said, and I've said it in the last week or two, the shock value of Sean Maloney taking over as Celtic manager has been absolutely diminished, Kev. If he was to step in just now, it would be celebrated. Why? Because he was part of Martin O'Neill's regime. So unfortunately, Regina, I've got to respectfully disagree with you on that. So we've got Brian Larkin coming in. We need a manager, not a coach. I think you need both. And I think Martin O'Neill's always been a manager, Kev. He's always been a manager. The dearly departed John Robertson, Steve Walford, they did all the stuff on a training pitch. Martin O'Neill would join in on the day before a game, on the Friday. You didn't see him during the week, right? And that is how he has worked. So I think you need both as part of your makeup. We've also got you and Boy Martin coming in, go after the Motherwell manager. I think we need a period of stability, Ewan. Personally, I'm going to tell you how I think it's going to go. So I've named a chairman. I don't know if you want to name one who you would bring in, but my reasoning behind it, Kev, there might be other figures other than the individual I've named. Someone who can step up and retain some kind of balance, and because it's mayhem at the moment at Celtic, and it's on that downward spiral, and the water tank's about to come through the ceiling, and you need somebody to come in and say, whoa, wait a minute, this cannot continue. It's really a strong figure. You cannot have a stooge.
I think the water tank's already through the ceiling, but we're still sitting watching the telly.
With a cigar.
Okay, so
Or house coat on, slippers, baffies. Or flip-flops, apparently. Regina says it's flip-flopping.
Flip-flop.
Yeah, manager then. Let's get on to the manager situation. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the channel. Stephen Riley, that has not gone unnoticed. Ewan Boy Martin, remember the Machiavelli Hokey Cokey song? Yeah, there's been a lot of songs and stories about Macca. But all I can say is he's always been a friend of Acsom, Kev. He's always supported us in a big, big way. Happy New Year, team, says Clydebank Celtic. It's a pleasure. And we hope to see all of these people popping up in the chat throughout 2026. Happy New Year, all you beautiful Celtic people. You and Martin, I hope you're having a great one in Dunoon. We did a great show over there and we'll do one again. This guy is not away yet. Oh my God. Fred.
Is that me? Sorry, Fred.
It could be me. Could be me. Right, so new manager. We're going to be bold with this last part of the show, Kev. Sorry to keep you an extra 10 minutes, my friend.
No hassle. I'm only taking down Christmas decorations, so
Mine's are up the loft, and whilst I was up there, I checked the water tank. Mine's are up the loft, the water tank's
the water tank, fine. No leaks, nothing.
Fine.
That's good. That's good.
Absolutely fine. Right. There's also quite a lot of Celtic VHS videos up there, and I'm talking hundreds, maybe as many as 500 Celtic VHS videos, not only the type that you see behind us, but ones that were taped off the telly. They need to be digitised. They need to go into one of these things, one of these newfangled exterior hard drive things. And I need to start punting these to Celtic fans of a similar vintage and who are as sad when it comes to Celtic history as me. This is the real Celtic collection. They're all at my loft. Interviews, documentaries, games, Archie McPherson with his comb over, flying all over the place. It's all there. Right, manager. I know what I'm going to say here, Kev. What do we do right now with Nancy, with a permanent, with an interim? What do we do to stabilise this ship?
As I says, I really wanted him. Well, come on, just admit that he's wrong here and actually just go. And that was on Motherwell on Wednesday night. You've now got to a point that we're only 2 days away from playing a Glasgow derby at home. So is that going to be the point if we do lose that game, that they go, right, we need to actually get somebody back in and here to actually steady the ship and take us to the end of the season, which looks like they probably should have done anyway. They had that man there. And I probably would believe if he is fired, it will be Martin and Sean that probably come back in for now at the end of the season. And possibly longer, depending on what actually happens. If they do come back. And the thing is, if they do it, if they let the Green Brigade back in and get Martin O'Neill back in, we're all kind of back on the same page quite quickly, even if some of the results didn't go our way. But with this manager, I've got an utter fear we're going to go full Tony Mowbray. Don't remember Mowbray's window when we brought in like Robbie Keane and all of that, and it was loan signings, and I think we brought in about
Diomansky. Remember Diomansky, Kamara, these guys, Edson Brathwaite.
I've got a funny feeling that we might do that again, and that'll just leave us in another mess in the summer. As I say, I'm still got a wee bit of belief. I've still got a wee bit of belief that Desmond will end us sooner rather than later to prove that he was right. And we've all heard the rumours that Nancy wasn't really Desmond's first choice anyway. And whoever his first choice was says that they didn't want it just now because they needed more experience. So I would bring back Martin, but again, he's got a couple of gigs lined up. So
he's clearly told Dermot Desmond he can't do it until after he's appeared with Acsom tomorrow night. This is the thing, right? I'm going to ask the question, Lova. Anybody who's there will see it asked live. I will ask Martin O'Neill the question, will you come back? I'll ask him the question live on stage, right? Simple as that. This one that comes up, Bernard Ponsonby's chairman. I actually think he would be brilliant as a voice person or a spokesperson, rather, for the Celtic support. I think Ponsonby would be brilliant.
If you're looking for a fan representative on the board, Bernard's that man.
Here's my take on the manager. This will wrap it up and then you can get back to family commitments, Kev. I think between now and the end of the season, we need to, right now, get rid of Nancy and his backroom team. Bush, they're gone. They're gone. It's no worked. Thank you and goodbye. The transfer window is a different challenge, right, with Paul Tisdale, because he probably does have a 1 in 10 hit rate, Kev, if that. So we need to bring in somebody who's going to stabilise everything. And that someone for me is a coaching team that was already there. The coaching team under Martin O'Neill was already there. Will Martin O'Neill spearhead that? I'm not so sure. I would like to see him doing it, but I'm not so sure he will do it. And that's where you then start thinking about your Gordon Strackens and all the rest of it in terms of coming in as that figurehead, as that spokesperson. That might happen. I'll ask Martin O'Neill his thoughts on that. Someone suggested in here, Kevin Gallagher, in actual fact, suggested that Martin O'Neill would take it, but he wants more permanency. Absolutely agree with that. And if that's the case, give him it. And then have a plan as to what happens to Martin O'Neill after he leaves the manager's position, something we spoke about when he was in charge for that small period, Kev. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for jumping in. Here's to 2026, ladies and gentlemen, right? Be healthy, be happy, and every single thing else follows. Thank you all for joining us. Give us a thumbs up. Join us tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.